it's funny because, and I think you've nailed it all, where we just try to do a whole body approach.
Exactly.
And because it's like, I don't know, your shoulder doesn't live in isolation. Your quad or your groin doesn't live in isolation.
Yeah.
And so if we treat the human body in parts, I think we start missing things, and then you start coming back for other things, which is a problem.
Yeah. Well, and one thing also that I find that your approach was really helpful is, remember like the first session we had, or when I committed to doing like the full package, like you sat me down and you had this like whiteboard where you kind of had squiggly lines like from low to high, right?
Yes.
Which reminded me of crypto, which is into that. But it was like, it just helped set the expectation that there will be setbacks. And people say that, but like seeing that like visually just was like, okay, like there will be setbacks. And we had a huge setback. I mean, in my journey here, I had an accident where I had a really bad bench that I invest in good equipment, people. But basically like I was doing incline, whatever it's called.
Incline press.
Incline press. Yeah. And the latch on the back basically did not do it properly. And I basically fell with like 80 pounds of weight and flipped backwards and almost injured myself, like to a point that like would have been dangerous. And so like that was in the middle of our training session. But again, like that would have probably put me, I would have been, like, stopped doing anything for 6 months just because I felt, oh, I'm injured now. I have to kind of, but within like a week, I was back into it. And even like a day afterwards, I was still doing things, but just modified.
Yeah. It's funny because when you called me about that, I mean, you were really distressed.
Yeah.
Number one, but number two, I think walking you away from the cliff, talking away from the cliff was good. And I know that a lot of people out there with chronic injuries do get sometimes anxious about, oh my God, is this going to set me back? Because you've been dealing with something for so long. But thankfully within that week you got better, which is great. And I don't think I even saw you. I think you were like away or
something. I mean, I didn't come in until like a week later, but even like right away, like your assistant Megan, who's also great, gave me the shockwave in the back and the needling. And again, I was surprised how quickly I was able to just like get back into it. Yeah.
Well, it's, I kind of wonder too, because you've been building quite a bit of strength, and I think you've developed a lot of resilience by building up that strength over time.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of why you actually felt better too.
Well, I mean, I'm sure like because this happened like maybe like 7 weeks into our project or our program. Had this happened, I mean, I had developed some more core strengths. I had developed more shoulder mobility. Like all these things, I think prevented a worse injury.
Oh, for sure. Definitely. And it's funny because I would say that and I'm glad you talked about the squiggly line. So for those of you who haven't been through our what we do towards the end of our talk when we meet with our clients for the first time is that we talk about expectations versus reality. And I think we all, and myself included, we all expect progress to be linear. And things you do this and then this happens. But that's just not life, and that is not recovery or rehab. And there will be ups and downs in that process, especially as we try to go through our phase one, which is getting people out of their acute pain, retraining the brain to be able to acquire new habits of movement. And that just takes time because you've been doing this, you've been living doing you for 40 years or so. And so it's going to take some time to actually undo some of that and reprogram you and your brain to be able to acquire new kinds of skills.
And the cool thing is, I mean, like you have all the, I mean, you're the expert here, but like you have all these assessments that you can kind of see how you're unlearning and learning. So I remember when it would come into the first couple sessions, Jerry would like put a little marker in my knee and then ask
test,
and I was like, okay, cool. Like there's something like objective that that I don't have to think about that can tell Jerry if I'm actually making progress or not. So in also some ways, like, oh, I'm not doing it right or wrong. It's like my body will let him know if I'm doing it right or wrong, and like that's that. So it's also nice to have that.
I'm glad you said that because I think that when you're in a situation like the traditional model where you can't do that, it's hard to like actually say if a patient's getting better or not. But we try to reassess every single session to make sure we're on the right track. Otherwise, we have to kind of replan things because if you're not getting better, we have sort of an expectation of how long it takes for people to get out of their acute phase, which is typically, I'd say on average 2 to 8 visits, depending on the person, how long they've had something for. And so if we can't measure those things as we go each session, then we're really kind of shooting in the dark.
Well, it's reassuring as a patient, to be able to kind of say, okay, well, like, as Tony from P90X says, do their best and forget the rest. Like, I'm relying on you and your team to let me know how I'm doing. I just have to focus on doing the effort. And so it's nice to have that partnership.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, how do you think that our model has been a little bit different as far as our treatment style versus maybe traditional PTs?
Well, as I mentioned, like the shock wave, the dry needling, that was something that I had never seen any kind of PT, and like that really blew me away. It's like, oh, cool. Like my mom's an acupuncturist, so I was used to acupuncture, and I had done acupuncture for injuries, but not in the context of PT. The other thing is, like, I really like the fact that you have such a nice, like, you have a gym in your place, so like I can do the activities with you, so I'm learning them.
Yes.
You take pictures so I can actually go back and see the pictures. So like the way you incorporate technology, the way you incorporate alternative approaches, and of course, excellent just like bedside manners, like, just you care about your patients, you and your entire team, like you feel like you're here for us, which again, emotionally, that is huge.
Huge, definitely. And I think especially guys in particular where maybe they don't want to admit that they're having issues and they're used to kind of clamming up because, they oftentimes are providers for their family and they want to sort of have that manliness about them. I think sometimes what gets missed is that, talking about our vulnerable issues sometimes. And when you have somebody who can support you in that, which is why I love F3, and being in community with other guys who also are on the same journey, I think that is part of the therapeutic process.
100%. And I think like that's part of it, like it's the body, mind, and soul, I think kind of come together in this environment.
Oh, I like that. Body, mind, and soul.